There is one sentence, just one. And when you finally say it and really mean it, when it rises from somewhere so deep inside you that it no longer sounds like a question, a request, or one last attempt to make peace, everything changes. Not because the words are magic, not because the sentence has some secret power hidden inside it. It changes because the person saying it is no longer the same person who once begged to be understood. It changes because the person in front of the narcissist has become someone they never planned for, someone they never thought would return to themselves. Stay with me, because this matters more than you think. What happened to you was not just a bad relationship. It was not a rough phase. It was not two people failing to communicate. It was not simple incompatibility. What happened was a slow breaking down of your sense of self by a person who needed you smaller so they could feel bigger, needed you confused so they could stay in control, needed you doubting yourself so they never had to face themselves. If that lands in your chest like truth, if something inside you just went still, then listen closely. This is for you. Because before you can say the sentence that ends the game, you have to understand what the game really was. You have to stop calling it by softer names. You have to stop dressing it up in polite language. You have to stop telling yourself it was less serious than it felt. It was serious. It was real. And the fact that you survived it does not make it small. It makes you strong. And what comes next may be the part no one has ever said to you clearly enough. Most people get this wrong. They think a narcissist fears being exposed. They think if enough people hear the truth, if enough screenshots are saved, if the right story is told to the right audience, the narcissist will finally collapse. Others think the narcissist fears anger. They think if they just stop being nice, stop being patient, stop swallowing their pain, and finally push back with equal force, the narcissist will retreat. And then there are the ones who stayed the longest. The ones whose spirit was worn down so slowly they almost missed it happening, and they start to believe the narcissist fears losing them. They believe their value is measured by how hard the narcissist tries to pull them back, but that is not it. That is not the real fear. Here is what a narcissist fears more than anything else. A person who no longer needs them to explain reality, a person who no longer waits for their approval to trust what is true, a person whose inner self has become so steady, so grounded, so clear that charm no longer works, rage no longer works, guilt no longer works, and confusion no longer works. That is the thing they cannot manage. That is the thing they cannot bend. A narcissist fears someone who is truly done, not dramatic done, not wounded done, not the kind of done that still looks back, real done, quiet done, final done, the kind where the door closes and there is no speech after it, no trembling, no negotiation, no secret wish to be chased, just peace. And that peace terrifies them because it is the one place they cannot follow you. To understand why that calm person is so frightening to them, you have to understand what narcissism really looks like. Not the cartoon version. Not just the loud person who brags all day and steals every spotlight in the room. Some are like that, yes. But many are not. Many are soft-spoken, many are charming, many look caring, thoughtful, even generous. Many know exactly how to make you feel special in the beginning. Many play the victim so well that people rush to protect them. Many seem wounded, misunderstood, hungry for love. Many look like the person you trusted most, the person you thought finally understood you, the person you planned your future around. But under all the different styles, one thing stays the same. They do not accept the full humanity of another person. They do not truly see you as a separate, whole, independent human being whose thoughts, needs, pain, and boundaries matter simply because they are yours. You are not fully a person to them. You were a role. You were a function. You were supply, comfort, admiration, stability, attention, proof, distraction, or control. And the moment you stopped serving that function in the exact way they wanted, they did not respond with care. They responded with punishment. So ask yourself this, honestly, when did they celebrate your joy without turning it back to themselves? When did they sit with your pain without competing with it? When did they hear your boundary and respect it just because it mattered to you? Not because they agreed, not because it benefited them, but simply because you asked. If those moments are hard to find, that is your clarity speaking. And clarity is not cruel. Clarity is where your life begins to return. It usually does not start with obvious harm. That is why it is so hard to name. It starts with mirroring. In the early days, they seem to become exactly who you needed. They reflect your values back to you. They echo your dreams. They share your tastes. They appear to understand your old wounds with almost eerie precision. It feels rare. It feels deep. It feels like fate. And sometimes they believe the performance themselves, at least for a while. That is part of what makes it so confusing. But here is the painful truth. Much of what you fell in love with was a reflection of you. It was built to pull you in. It was designed, consciously or not, to feel familiar, safe, and unusually close. Then cracks began to show. A colder version appeared, a crueler version, a dismissive version, a version that made you question your memory, your tone, your timing, your intentions, your sanity. And because the beginning felt so real, your mind tried to protect the original picture. You told yourself the loving version was the real one, and this other version was stress, fear, pressure, childhood pain, a misunderstanding, or maybe something you caused. And that is where the war inside you begins. Between what you saw and what you were told you saw, between what you felt and what you were told you should feel, between your own truth and the version of truth that kept the relationship alive. And once that war begins, you stop standing on solid ground, you start living in emotional weather, and that kind of weather can make even the strongest person feel lost. This is the center of it. Confusion. Not because you are weak, because confusion is one of the strongest tools of control. A narcissist does not always need to trap you with force. They trap you with inconsistency. Warmth, then withdrawal. Praise, then criticism. Closeness, then distance. Kindness, then cruelty. Your nervous system starts working overtime. It stops resting and starts scanning. It watches every tone change. It studies every look. It replays every conversation. It asks what you should say, how you should act, what part of yourself you should hide, what version of yourself might bring back the person from the beginning. And that is the trap, because the inconsistency becomes the bond, the unpredictability becomes the hook. Your brain starts chasing relief the way a thirsty person chases water, and the harder you chase it, the more deeply tied you become to the very thing hurting you. This is not stupidity. This is not you lacking self-respect. This is what happens when hope gets mixed with pain and the reward never comes in a steady way. You keep trying to solve it. You keep trying to crack the code. You keep trying to earn back a version of them that was never stable enough to stay. And here is the truth that hurts, but also frees you. The version you are chasing is not real in the way you need it to be real. It cannot hold. It cannot stay. It was a setup for longing, not a home for love. And once you see that, really see it, the chase begins to lose its spell. That is the start of your return. People use the word gaslighting all the time now, but most still do not understand how deep it can go. The worst kind is not just about one lie, one denied event, one twisted memory. It is about being trained to doubt your entire way of knowing. It is the slow process of being told your feelings are too much, your reactions are the problem, your memory is flawed, your instincts are irrational, your boundaries are attacks, your sadness is manipulation, your anger is proof that you are unstable. Over time, you stop checking in with yourself first. You stop asking, what do I feel? What do I know? What did I see? Instead, you start asking, how will they take this? What version of reality will they allow? What emotion is safe to show? What truth can survive the next conversation? That is how self-trust gets erased. Not all at once, piece by piece, until one day you are standing in your own life feeling like a stranger to yourself. If that happened to you, listen carefully. You did not lose your mind. You were trained to distrust it. You did not become too sensitive. Your inner alarm was repeatedly punished until you stopped hearing it clearly. You did not become weak. You adapted to survive something deeply disorienting. And that matters because the shame many survivors carry is often based on a lie. They believe they should have known better. They believe they should have left sooner. They believe they are somehow responsible for how thoroughly their reality was shaken. But being manipulated is not the same as being foolish. Being worn down is not the same as being broken. And what was done to you is not the same thing as who you are. Do not miss that line. It might be one of the most important lines in your healing. there is also the bond itself. And this is where so many people judge themselves unfairly. They ask, why did I stay? Why did I go back? Why did I defend someone who was hurting me? And because the world loves simple answers, they often get simple blame. Low self-esteem, neediness, weak boundaries, poor judgment. But the truth is deeper. What many people call a trauma bond is not just emotional confusion. It is a real nervous system attachment formed through cycles of pain and relief, fear and comfort, distance and reward. When someone hurts you and then becomes the source of relief from that hurt, your brain can lock onto them in a way that feels stronger than logic, stronger than evidence, sometimes even stronger than self-protection. The chemistry is real, the craving is real, the bond is real, and yes, the love you felt was real too, even if the person you gave it to could not meet it honestly. That is why leaving can feel like withdrawal. That is why silence can feel unbearable. That is why missing them can happen at the exact same time as knowing they harmed you. Both things can be true. That does not mean you belong with them. It means your body learned a pattern and now has to unlearn it. And that unlearning takes time. So if you are blaming yourself for the depth of your attachment, stop for a moment. You were not stupid for bonding. You were human. Your brain did what human brains do under repeated cycles of danger and relief. Understanding that does not excuse what happened. It gives you a foundation. It gives you language. It gives you something solid to stand on while you begin rebuilding a life that is not organized around someone else's moods, demands, and distortions. Then comes the turning point. And it looks different for everyone. Sometimes it comes after one especially brutal moment. Sometimes it comes slowly, through reading, thinking, remembering, and finally allowing yourself to admit what you kept trying to soften. Sometimes it arrives in the quiet after yet another argument, when you suddenly realize you are tired in a way sleep cannot fix. But when it comes, it changes the whole structure. Because this is the moment you stop trying to save them. This is the moment you stop rehearsing the perfect explanation, the perfect text, the perfect conversation that will finally make them understand. You stop waiting for the apology that should have come long ago. You stop hoping for the honest remorse that almost certainly is not coming. You stop asking them to validate the reality they worked so hard to deny, and instead, something radical happens. You begin to validate it yourself. You begin to believe your own eyes again. You begin to trust your own body when it says, "This feels wrong." You begin to feel the cost of staying more clearly than the fear of leaving. And when that shift happens, the narcissist feels it, even before you say a word. Because their control runs on a certain fuel, your reactivity, your hope, your fear, your heartbreak, your endless need to get closure, justice, understanding, peace. As long as you are emotionally circling them, even in anger, they still have access to your energy. They still matter. They still sit somewhere at the center of your inner world. And for them, that is the drug. That is the supply. Not love, not connection, relevance, control, access. That is why they return. That is why they provoke. That is why they stir chaos the second things get quiet. And here is the part many people miss. They are not powerful in the way they look powerful. The cruelty is not power. The arrogance is not power. The manipulation is not power. It feels powerful when you are on the receiving end of it, yes. It can dominate a room. It can break your focus. It can distort your days. But underneath it is not strength. Underneath it is defense. A false self constantly trying not to crack. A deep fear constantly trying not to be touched. Every move is built to avoid exposure to their own emptiness, their own shame, their own terror of being ordinary, unimportant, unlovable, or unseen. The rage is fear. The contempt is fear. The silent treatment is fear. The charm is fear wearing better clothes. None of that makes the harm okay. None of it asks you to pity them. But it does give you something important: perspective. The person who hurt you was not standing on some mountain of true power. They were running a survival system that required your confusion to keep going. And you, being caring and open and deeply able to love, stepped toward them with sincerity. You offered patience. You offered understanding. You offered room for complexity, room for wounds, room for flaws. You offered something real. But real love cannot land in a place that is built on constant control. So they twisted it, used it, tested it, pushed against it. Not because you gave the wrong kind of love, but because they could not receive it without facing parts of themselves they spend their whole lives avoiding. Once you see that, something soft but powerful begins to happen. You stop making their behavior a measurement of your worth. You stop holding their inability as proof of your inadequacy. And that changes everything. Now we come to the sentence, but notice how we got here. Not through revenge, not through strategy, not through becoming colder than them, not through finding the sharpest words or winning one final argument. We got here through truth, through the long, painful, sacred work of seeing clearly. Because if the sentence comes from rage, it has no weight. If it comes from wounded pride, it has no weight. If it comes from a performance meant to make them chase you, it has no weight. It only carries power when it comes from a deep, settled knowing. The sentence is simple. I do not need anything from you anymore. That is it. Maybe your version is slightly different. Maybe it sounds more natural in your own voice. But the meaning stays the same. I do not need your approval. I do not need your explanation. I do not need your apology. I do not need your version of me. I do not need your permission to trust what I lived. I do not need your love to prove I am lovable. I do not need your validation to know what is real. And when a narcissist hears that, truly hears it, something old and primal stirs inside them. Because what they fear most is not being hated. Hate still contains energy. Hate still points toward them. What they fear is becoming irrelevant, quietly, permanently, cleanly irrelevant. Not in a way they can spin into victimhood, not in a way they can twist into, you abandoned me, not in a way they can reframe as proof that you still care, but in the stillest way of all, in the way that says the cord is gone, the hook is gone, the open wound is gone, and suddenly there is nothing left for them to press. That is why indifference born from healing is so powerful. Not fake indifference, not cold silence full of hidden longing, real freedom, real internal distance, real peace. You become someone they cannot read the old way anymore. There is no button to push, no fear to trigger, no hope to dangle, no guilt to weaponize, no chaos to pull you back into orbit. And that changes the entire field. Because the game only works when you still need something from them. Even closure, even justice, even a clean confession, even one final moment where they finally admit what they did. As long as your healing depends on their participation, they still have leverage. But the moment your healing belongs to you, the leverage starts to die. That does not mean it never hurts again. It does not mean memories vanish. It does not mean your body instantly forgets what it learned. It means something deeper. It means the pain is no longer running the show. It means your center has moved back inside you. It means their voice is no longer louder than your own. And when that happens, the sentence is not just something you say to them. It becomes a truth you live by. I do not need anything from you anymore. Say it in your silence. Say it in the boundaries you keep. Say it in the number you block. Say it in the room you leave. Say it in the life you build that has no hidden door left open for them. Because that is what they cannot stand. Not your anger, your absence, not your tears, your peace, not your pain, your freedom. That is the part that makes the whole structure shake. The people who truly come through narcissistic abuse are not empty on the other side. They are not deadened. They are not loveless. They are not harder in the simple way people imagine. They become more discerning, more awake, more able to feel the difference between attention and care, between intensity and intimacy, between being mirrored and being genuinely seen. They stop confusing emotional chaos with deep connection. They stop calling self-erasure loyalty. They stop naming exhaustion as commitment. They become quieter inside, stronger inside, not showy strong, not performative strong, the kind of strong that does not need to announce itself, the kind that can walk away without a speech, the kind that can sit alone without panicking, the kind that knows love should not cost your reality. And if you are still in the middle of it, still shaking, still missing them, still second-guessing yourself, hear me clearly. The fact that you are not there yet does not mean you will not get there. Healing is not a single moment. It is many moments. Remembering, resisting, relapsing in thought, returning, crying, learning, telling the truth again and again and again, until one day the truth stops feeling like something you are trying to convince yourself of and starts feeling like home. That day will come. Keep going. Because the person who walks out of this with their self back is not someone brand new. It is you with the fog lifted. You with your own voice restored. You with your own life returned to your hands. And that version of you is not weak. It never was. You were targeted because of what is good in you. Read that again in your own heart. Not because you were foolish, because you were open, because you had empathy, because you could love deeply, because you could see complexity in another person and still offer care. Those are not defects. Those are beautiful qualities, rare qualities, valuable qualities. And someone who cannot create those qualities in themselves may spend years trying to drain them from someone else. They came for your light because they did not know how to make their own. But here is the ending they never planned for. They could not destroy what was real in you. They could bruise it. They could confuse it. They could bury it under fear and self-doubt and fatigue, but they could not erase it. If you are still breathing, it is still there. If you are still listening, it is still there. If part of you still aches for your own life back, it is still there. So do not measure your worth by how long it took to see clearly. Do not measure your strength by how perfect your exit looked. Do not wait to feel fearless before you begin choosing yourself. Just begin, quietly if needed, slowly if needed, but begin. And when the day comes that you can say it from the deepest, calmest place in you with no heat and no hidden plea, let the sentence be simple. Let it land like a closed door in a quiet house. I do not need anything from you anymore. That is the line. That is the freedom. That is the moment the spell breaks. And from there, your life is finally yours again.